So now the people that I thought could help my career are in one corridor. The people I thought who could help aid my addiction are in another corridor. And then there's this other sector that just kind of floats out there, like who can make me feel good and keep my spotlight shining bright. Well, eventually those corridors all collide in the hallway, right? They all come to a kind of a fork in the road. And I'm doing broadcast work for the team. I'm doing things on television, and I'm doing them intoxicated. And it gets to a head where I'm being told to get treatment or my career opportunities with the franchise are over. I thought enough of myself that I did not pursue treatment. I thought I could go get a job elsewhere with a different franchise. And that really was a catalyst to sinking deeper into a community that did not care about me. They cared about the good time that could be had at the bar. They cared about the good time that could be had smoking. They cared about that fleeting moment rather than the forever moment of friendship, of community.
Welcome to the EQ Gangster podcast, where you will learn practical tools to grow your mental and emotional health and intelligence to be the best version of yourself, both at work and at home. It is real, raw, and transformational. The journey of emotional growth isn't easy, but it's worth it. I believe in you. This episode is sponsored by Arrowhead Leadership Consulting. What are your organization's biggest pain points right now? Low EQ leaders, weak managers, toxic culture, high turnover, low engagement, leader development lagging behind company growth, no company career path. Let us know if your organization needs leadership coaching, workshops, training, or keynotes. Visit arrowhead-leadership.com for more details. Arrowhead-leadership.com.
Oh, what's going on, man?
What's happening, buddy?
It's great to see you. Long time no see.
Yeah. How's Colorado or wherever you are?
I'm in Texas for another day.
Okay. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, you look great. How you feeling?
Let's see. Ups and downs with more ups than downs.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. So and that was my attempt to work on my people-pleasing addiction, because normally I would say what I thought you would want to hear, right? So I always did toxic positivity, like, oh, it's always great and rainbows and unicorns. And the reality is it's not always,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so I'm just trying to be more real in my responses so that I don't feed my people-pleasing addiction.
I'm right there with you, man. You know, my go-to is I'm better than I deserve, which is always true,
Oh, that's good.
right? But that doesn't mean things are great.
Right. That's great. I love that. I
You
love
know,
that. That's
so
awesome.
yeah.
And how have you been?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. I'm better than I deserve.
Nice.
But to that end, experiencing some trepidation, because I'm making some pretty significant moves in my calling, pursuing ministry work, that also is adjacent to the hospitality industry. So launching a new project, hopefully in the next 9 months.
Wow.
But in doing so, left the division I was with and kind of a pretty strong baseline of income, and just putting up my shield of faith and moving forward with my pursuits of ministerial studies and working with my church and working with men in recovery, and got a great group of guys that I see quite frequently, if not daily, and just believing for the best.
Wow. Man,
Yeah,
that's great, Travis. Okay, so
thank you.
dude, I'm so excited to talk to you. And specifically, God has me on a journey right now
Come on, brother.
where I am trying to better understand what emotionally and spiritually healthy community can look like.
Mm,
And so, because I come from 24 years in a business cult where the relationships were 100% transactional.
right.
I thought they were relationship based, and I thought they extended beyond the boundaries of the the world that we were living in, but they did not. and maybe that was part of my naivety, for thinking that or having that expectation. But it kind of crushed me. My people pleasing addiction, right? Really, it was a big wound and injury to me, especially because of my emotional neediness. And so I would love to hear, your story arc, and if you can weave in there the role or effect on community, because I'm sure based on the little bit that we got a chance to meet at the Panera, you've seen healthy community and you've seen I love it. You've seen both. I bet you've probably seen unhealthy community and you've probably seen healthy community. And I would love to hear again through your story arc what what your experience has been about community.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that, Noble, and absolutely, right? So, community. Uh, Goodness. Authentic community versus manufactured, I think is a place for me to start this tale. Okay. And so let me go back many, many decades. By many decades, I mean like two and a half. Uh, my early 20s and pursuing favor amongst the living, materialistic possessions, status, all that stuff, right? And so what does that mean specifically for my walk? Well, getting involved coaching youth sports sounds like a noble endeavor. I loved every minute of it. I was coaching my cousins, I was coaching kids that needed coaching in basketball specifically, as well as track and field. Um, but who was I doing that for? Whose glory and whose benefit? Well, my perspective was, well, I'm doing it for the kids. But was I really? Because I loved having this open line of communication with influential parents and people in the know and recruits for colleges and things of that nature, right? Because that made me feel important. That put me on a pedestal. So now the glory, the focus is being shifted towards Travis. And in doing that, I created this spotlight that I feel forever crave, or at least for the next 2.5 decades, I would crave this attention. And in that, I sought only the community that could feed that attention. So a few years pass and I'm doing very well, both financially as it relates to status. I'm doing very well as it relates to coaching these youth, and our program has grown significantly, and we're nationally recognized teams as well as locally recognized teams, and things are going great, right? And who's behind it? Well, it's me, 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 me. I am the center of the team, right? And for whatever purpose God had in the moment, I get introduced to a group called Athletes in Action. It's a Christian based sports ministry that provides opportunities around the globe to grow the sport, not just of basketball, but sport in general. And I'm a part of a board meeting. And in that board meeting is a guy named Donnie Nelson. Donnie is the then GM of the Dallas Mavericks. Get to talking briefly, and he says, "Hey, we should connect." And all this happens in, early part of a year, like February or so. Well, time passes. I never hear from him. I give him my info at that meeting. And then I get a phone call in October, roughly 7 or 8 months later. And it's bright and early in the morning, and I'm living um, not a very godly, favorable life. And I roll out of bed, and I'm definitely hungover, and I'm probably a little stoned still. And he says, "Hey, we need to meet." And I said, "Okay, great." So I meet with him. I don't know what we're discussing. I think it's something to promote my youth teams. And turns out he's offered me an opportunity to come work at the professional level. Very cool. All about me. So now my community has shifted from working with these parents and these kids to help them to working in an industry that is purely based on transactions. Trade this player there, draft this player here, strategy of the next, negotiate for the best, all of these things. And it's nothing against the organization, it's nothing against the people within the organization, it's what the business is built around. So knowing that, that sentiment encapsulates my existence. Well, who do I know that can help me with this? And that's going to be the baseline of our relationship. It will not be anything greater than that. It will not be anything less than that. What can you do for me if you're asking something from me? And so it continues to devolve. It doesn't evolve. It gets worse, right? And so um, at that time, the throes of my addiction become increasingly worse. Um, I'd meet my wife, fall in love, we get married, we have a baby, and um, I'm a daily pot smoker and a pretty significant late afternoon, evening drinker, but it hasn't really taken the 24-hour period over quite yet. And I surround myself in a community that is okay with that and maybe not necessarily supportive of it, but they're not condoning it. And it's a societal norm. And again, who's buying the next round, that transaction becomes something that I appreciate and I place value on. So now the people that I thought could help my career are in one corridor. The people I thought who could help aid my addiction are in another corridor. And then there's this other sector that just kind of floats out there, like who can make me feel good and keep my spotlight shining bright. Well, eventually those corridors all collide in the hallway, right? They all come to a, kind of a fork in the road. And I'm doing broadcast work for the team. I'm doing things on television, and I'm doing them intoxicated. And it gets to a head where I'm being told to get treatment or my career opportunities with the franchise are over. I thought enough of myself that I did not pursue treatment. I thought I could go get a job elsewhere with a different franchise. And that really was a catalyst to sinking deeper into a community that did not care about me. They cared about the good time that could be had at the bar. They cared about the good time that could be had smoking. They cared about that fleeting moment rather than the forever moment of friendship, of community. And Noble, I will tell you, it lasted for a good 6 or 7 years. And that 6 or 7 years, I saw the growth of my daughter, the birth of both of my sons, and the absolute devastation and destruction I caused my immediate family, the people around me, my extended family. And as I look back, because of your very poignant topic, I was in the wrong community. I wasn't going to church. I had no church home. I was a Christian by name. I was a fan of Christ, but I was not a follower. I could speak the language. I could get through. I could lie and manipulate my way to getting people to understand that it wasn't really that bad. It was terrible at the root of it. And it's funny. I'm in my friend John's studio right now. He's a great Christian author. No free ads, but his book's behind me right here. Finding Rest, new book coming out in October. Um, and we were just talking about it because he had this post about a gentleman who had broken his back, and that was the miracle God did in his life to get him to slow down and realize what was happening in front of him. Well, in a similar way, I'm running a race in February of 23, and I have a stress fracture in my leg, and I am laid out for weeks. And Noble, when I tell you I was getting on crutches to make my way to the corner store to buy alcohol in the morning without my wife finding out, literally crutching through the neighborhood to get there. That's where I found kind of a dark pit that I knew I wasn't going to get out of, but those around me decided to cast a rope down and just say, "Hold on, we will drag you out." And it led me to a group called the Men of Nehemiah. It is a military instructed, 12-step based Christian recovery group based here in Dallas. It's a 9-month transformative program that, despite going to treatment programs in the past along the Pacific coastline, where you learn more about surfing, street tacos, and yoga than you do about recovery in Christ, I went to deep South Dallas in one of the nastiest parts of DFW available. And there, Christ found me. I was led to a deeper relationship with him, and in turn, true community entered my life, where now I can say I have a band of brothers that I can call on 24 hours a day. I have counselors, I have a support system, I have a wife that actually trusts me again. I have a relationship with my kids, as you witnessed at Panera that morning, that I am beyond grateful for. And without the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ in my life and that level of community, because the opposite of addiction is community, I would not be here with you today. And I did take that quote from the founder of Men of Nehemiah, Colonel Lewis Urrell Jr. So got to cite my source.
Wow. Bro. Thank you for sharing. I know it took you 5 to 10 minutes maybe to share that, but I know there's 2 or 3 years. Well, I mean, the whole thing was, over the course of, maybe you just described 15 years, maybe your 10 to 15 year journey that you've been on, that has had a lot of ups and downs and a lot of dark places and a lot of and tremendous amounts of growth. What, man, can you share? And thank you. So thank you for sharing your vulnerability and your transparency, Travis. So God has by his grace given me an opportunity to work with leaders, and a lot of leaders, me included, have developed unhealthy coping mechanisms. And I'm in a really intentional, serious growth phase in my life right now. And I've got this Bible study I'm doing, and man, it is just revealing just how prideful and selfish,
Mm,
right, I have been. At the root of our coping mechanisms is survival, which ultimately is pride and ego. And how much of my decision making in the past has been around protecting my ego
right.
and ego survival at almost, I mean, I would almost argue, at all costs. Like, what can I do to protect my ego, which at the root of tremendous amounts of evil and poor decision making is selfish ambition from the Bible. And I wish I could remember the verse, but there's a
Mm,
verse that specifically talks about, selfish ambition leads to all sorts of not positive outcomes. And how did you, what were some of those key maybe decision points or milestones that you had to overcome to, like, because I'm sure that growth was not instantaneous, right? I'm
oh,
sure it
no.
was, right, a kind of a slow, painful process of death to self, the dying of the ego, so to speak. Can you kind of give us a sneak peek into that part of your journey?
Oh, Noble, thank you for your transparency in this too, because I suffer from the same thing, right? I can say, oh, it's little me, big him, all I want, but it's a daily reminder, if not multiple times a day. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'm winning that fight either. And it dying to self, for me, is a recognition of my gratitude or a lack thereof. And that's one thing I really appreciate about plugging into your network, right? Is you'll start these episodes with a verbal gratitude list, right? I love that one that really struck me, man. And I'm gonna I look. I grew up in coaching, right? And coaching, nothing coaching, and now I'm a chef. And all of that, it's all plagiarism, right? We take something and put a new name on it and make it our own. Take these ingredients and make a tweak, and it's our recipe, right? So here's my plagiarism of Noble and the EQ gangster himself, right? You're grateful for Cholula. I'm grateful for Lay's sour cream and onion potato chips and Duke's mayonnaise. Okay. And if it's something as simple as mayonnaise that's going to remind me of those things that I am blessed to have in my life that literally are not consequential to anyone else, but it shrinks who I am in my mind, then God can still work in me. Right. And it's not that he never stopped. It's that I build walls that prevent that from happening at the efficient rate that he is capable of, And um, so whether it's Cholula or sour cream and onion chips, uh, or the grace and mercy bestowed upon me to still be a married man today, there are the small things and the and the big things that if I can do my countdown prayer, which it's a 3-2-1. It's three things I'm grateful for, two things I'm praying for others, and one thing I'm asking for the opportunity from God to have. Right. So before coming on your network, I have shared my testimony with many people face to face, and I've shared it with an audience of maybe 300 or 400 people at one time. And that's all well and good. But now it's out there. And so I was actually praying for courage to do this after we first met, because this is a big step. And it's funny because I saw a clip from Morgan Freeman, who I love as an actor. And in the clip, it was that Jim Carrey movie. I can't recall what it's the name of it, but he gets to be God for a day or something. And Morgan Freeman is sitting in this restaurant, and he's telling this actress, and he goes, we don't just pray for courage and instantly become courageous. We pray for the opportunity to show courage. And that is the miracle that God provides. And so if I can remind myself of that, Noble, then I think I'm abiding in him.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. Reminding ourselves out, like one thing that I'm working on is to kind of go along with what you're saying is my my desperation of him, because I have been so performance driven.
Mm,
And so, hey God, I got this. Like, I got this. It's like, Noble, like, how long do I have to live to realize I don't got this? Like, how many times have I proved to myself, like I need a reminder that I, like, dude, it's like my track record is a losing record, but yet I still, it's like, but conversely, God has always provided, he's always protected, he's always been there. So why don't I, like, why isn't my default to trust in him versus to trust in me? And I know there's a dynamic where, I it's like, my confidence, I want to be confident in who God made me, but my confidence is in the Lord in me, not in me, right? Not in
right.
Noble, because again, I can switch back to prideful Noble
Mm,
like in a
yeah.
millisecond, right? So trying to remind myself again, just my desperation, hourly desperation that and then the other dynamic that is, I tell you, has been tough for me, or is tough for me, is again, is the letting go of my perceived control that I think I have, and just, you know hey God, like, legit, I trust you. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I trust you as
Right.
the perfect parent and father that he is. And so here's another question. In my journey that I'm going through of trying to better understand community and healthy community and what that looks like, I'm also trying to understand and grow from solitude. So in your recovery from addiction and your journey that you have been through, what role did also solitude play in your healing and recovering journey?
Oh, wow. I enjoy solitude. And I need to say that with this caveat. My solitude is different than isolation. My solitude has intentionality. My solitude is a chance for me to embrace my emotion that I'm dealing with, apply it through maybe a meditative lens, or apply it through a time with God, a quiet time with God, or something. I mean, I find solitude in my morning routine because I'm the first one up, and it gets me a level of focus and determination, motivation for the day. And I can't say with 100% certainty that without that solitude, I would get the same results. If my 5-year-old was nipping at my ankles, or my 12-year-old daughter is, you know, educating me on the needs to study Jane Goodall and conserve the Earth's resources and things of that nature. So I want to make sure there's a distinct line, because I believe solitude for myself is a good thing as long as it doesn't transform into isolation. Because in isolation, where I find my mind going, Noble, is a dangerous place. It's one where my addiction to control takes over. Because it's not necessarily alcohol is my problem. Alcohol was a symptom of it, right? But what was I addicted to? I was addicted to the narrative that Travis is in control. Travis can determine whether people like him or not. Travis can determine whether people view him as successful or not. Travis can control the narrative around Travis. Travis, Travis, Travis. It's my ego at work, and in an isolated environment, I start to craft that mentality all over again. Versus in a moment of solitude, again, there's an intentional nature to that time alone for me. And I have to credit a gentleman named Tommy Castillo, who to this day is my counselor, but I was introduced to him also at the Men of Nehemiah. And he really dialed in not just on what some of my hangups and my hurts were, but how to properly navigate them as a father of 3 at the time. We just welcomed our daughter into the world in January, our 4th. Um, and to be purposeful with each moment of each day, but still finding that time to rest. And if that includes solitude, great. But if that equals isolation, then I may need to call someone, talk to my wife, lean on a support group, bring into my bring myself into my community, and be vulnerable and transparent. Because I think what a lot of people lack in this world is something that I struggle with greatly, and that is the fact that vulnerability, real vulnerability, is a superpower.
And what's the context for you to say that?
Perpetually hiding my real emotions for 30 years, from when I was 11 years old and smoked out of a bong for the first time, to when I was 12 when I first drank, and all of the events that surrounded the reason why I chose to do that, and then why I chose to continue doing it, and then living a fake Christian lifestyle for so long. That's the driving force.
So that was super helpful. So it's like, I think it's John Eldridge,
Oh,
Wild at Heart, right? And then Morgan Snyder's book, Becoming a King. They both talk about the dynamic of the false self versus the true self.
yes.
And that makes a lot of sense. The false self, the true self was Adam and Eve before the fall. They were totally comfortable being naked, bebopping around the garden,
Yeah.
doing stuff, checking out the bumblebees and the giraffes and the zebras or whatever's going on. And but then after they screwed up and face planted, then all of a sudden they became ashamed and embarrassed and guilty. They felt guilty, and they put on the fig leaves, right? It's
Right.
like that's so what you're saying is not living vulnerably, which I would argue leads to inauthenticity, is crafting our fig leaf jumpsuit so that the real us cannot be seen, and we craft our fig leaf jumpsuit to look how we think we want others to view us or see us, versus which and I would argue that with that jumpsuit on, that also prevents us from healing and growing
Absolutely.
as
I
well. But
think
if
you nailed
we,
it. Yeah.
as soon as we are able to take off the fig leaves and put our real self to the Lord and to healthy community, then the Lord, and through solitude, right, through all of that stuff, God can start doing the healing and the surgery once we let all our walls down and that ego protection down. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I think you're nailing it. And what I mean by kind of that vulnerability element is not so much that I am walking around with a billboard saying, "Hi, my name is Travis, I'm an alcoholic," which I think gets preached too much in one direction, right? What I'm saying is I am overcome by the strength of my testimony and by the blood of the lamb. And in doing so, I now exhibit traits that other people want to ask why. And when that question is asked, now I can let my vulnerability shine through at the level that's appropriate for that conversation or that community or that relationship so that, as I'm called to do, I can be of service to others.
Love that. Can you juxtapose two dynamics for me? What can you compare and contrast Travis in addiction versus Travis healing and post addiction and growing? What is that? What is it? Compare and contrast those two Travises for me.
Ooh, okay. So, Travis in addiction, as described in the AA Big Book or any encounter you've ever had with an alcoholic or an addict, I was selfish at my core. And that selfishness was a manifestation more so of my fear of inadequacy, my fear of success, or my fear of lack of success. I mean, so many things could be applied to that term fear, but ultimately that's what it boiled down to. Versus Travis in this new season, this completely opposite end of the spectrum, this dichotic nature that was and now is. I am a healing person. I am not healed. I know this, and thus I continue to do daily work because I realize that enemy is still at the door. There's a pastor who pours into the program down at Nehemiah who, Satan is at the gates cracking knuckles ready to bash skulls. That's what he's here to do, and he's at the gates. What am I doing to fortify my gates on the daily basis? And that healing process comes with a level of awareness, but there also is time where, you know, I enjoy kind of stepping back and saying, this is working. And not necessarily in a self-congratulatory sense, but more so in the sense of encouraging myself, of trying to build myself up enough to continue to do it. And then whatever the calling God places on my life to take it one step further. And that's where I now find myself with this new kind of endeavor moving into ministerial studies and ultimately launching this new initiative I have to better help the recovery community at large.
That's awesome. That's great. That's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that kind of comparison, and what I hadn't realized in my living in my addiction and sin and selfishness is just, oh man, I read a powerful quote by some famous person this morning, actually. How do you keep people in prison?
Mm,
By getting them to think they're not in one.
right.
And that was 100% noble pre breakthrough. I didn't realize the prison that I had created for myself in my selfishness and pride and ego protection. I didn't realize that I had created this big Fort Knox. And and now on my recovery journey, realizing no, I don't like God's got me. I don't have
Yeah.
to create all this control mechanisms and survival mechanisms and coping mechanisms. Like I'm trusting God to do all that stuff for me instead of me doing it in
Yeah.
my own power, which is always ineffective and again doesn't
Tell me
doesn't
about it. Yeah.
right doesn't lead in positive direction. Um so Travis, can you share like what tell us about this new program you're doing, this new initiative, this new ministry, this new decision. Tell us about that, if you're whatever you're willing
Oh,
to and open to.
okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Still very much the genesis, but um, I was a hospitality major in college and always had this idea that I would eventually open a restaurant. And getting out of pro sports, getting out of basketball, forcibly so, uh, by my own actions, um, I immediately went back to what I knew, which was the hospitality industry. And Noble, as I'm sure you know, it is just rife with drugs, alcohol abuse, poor, misguided living. And that's just the nature of the industry as it is here in America. And I continue to cycle through these ideas of, oh, well, I'll start a restaurant that serves at risk youth. I'll start a restaurant that I'll get a Michelin star so I get all the credit, all these things. And then ultimately, through my journey at Nehemiah and going back to the hospitality industry where I now find myself, this vision was placed on my heart after a lot of prayer and meditation to open an initiative called Commune, community, communion, right? But coming together, right? Fostering this idea that a meal can be bigger than what's on your plate. And in doing that, I plan to employ 75% of a workforce that is in active addiction recovery, men and women. We're going to close the circle of the business of a restaurant. Our delivery drivers will be full-time employees picking up locally sourced proteins, locally sourced farm-raised ingredients. We will provide packaged meals to nonprofit organizations that house and treat those who are in addiction or suffering at the hands of abuse. And we will also have retail hubs throughout DFW, similar to a Snapped Kitchen, where those meals prepared at our commissary kitchen in South Dallas will be distributed multiple times a week for the public at large to enjoy. All that will be encompassed in what I believe to be a very chic restaurant space where your employees are people who are actively looking to make a difference in their life and they're looking for that second chance. Because, Noble, there are 35 US cities where we've seen addiction at its worst, major cities. So this is something that Dallas is not, it's not unique to Dallas. It's scalable to other markets. I just know Dallas and I know what we need right now. And as such, I feel if we can put this program together through partnerships and investment, both, we can launch not just a successful restaurant, but a successful ministry that provides hope to so many who don't feel like their skill set as a delivery driver, as a server or waitress or waiter, as a cook or a chef, as a porter, because they used to live a life that was full of degradation and lacked hope in terms of healthy living. What if we could turn that shame into glory and give them that outlet where they don't feel compelled as though hope no longer exists because this is all I know? So my goal is to take commune to the people that need it, and then in turn, our audience will present itself. I can assure them that it'll be great food. That I'm confident in. But the reason why I'm pursuing ministerial studies is because if this is in fact going to be a full-scale ministry, then I must equip myself as a leader in that department as well. I have to become a subject matter expert there.
Mm.
So I'm taking these next 9 months to a year to pursue a BS in that way. Um, and eventually, when, I don't know, God has not put a date on my heart, but the two words are education and experience.
Mm.
So I'm pursuing the education, and I continue to volunteer as a sponsor, a mentor, and give back to nonprofits here that serve those in addiction, so that I can grow in that way and grow in the way God's calling me.
That's awesome. That's great, Travis. Okay, love that. And there's somebody that I recently met. I've got to connect you with as well. You
Oh,
guys
thank
have
you.
similar passions. So anyway, I'll talk to you about that after we're done. Um, how do people find you? How do they connect with you if they've got more questions about any of your
Please.
testimony or experiences or journey? What's the best way for people to find you, follow you, connect with you?
So certainly, I don't know if you can post my email, but by all means, email at any time. It's travis.b.blakeley@gmail.com. And then to that end, I did recently start a Give, Send, Go if you feel compelled to help me in this journey. And I can send you that link as well, Noble. And lastly, my wife so graciously runs my Instagram account for me at Chef Blakeley. And through those three avenues, those are the easiest approaches. And I'm happy to share my personal cell information to anyone who reaches out. If they're in need of help, by all means, I am an open door. I have tried to get better at establishing boundaries in that way, but I will say I pretty much return calls or text 24 hours a day.
Okay,
I don't know.
so
Maybe that's the people pleasing in us, Noble. Is that a bad thing? I'm not sure.
so okay, so let me just I'm gonna read these off so that for the audience's sake. So I got Travis.B as in Bravo dot Blakeley, which is spelled Blakeley at gmail.com. You're
Correct.
also on Give Send Go, and you're also at on IG at Chef Blakeley, again Blakeley, at Chef Blakeley.
You
Excellent.
nailed it.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. So, Travis, thank you. This has been absolutely powerful, insightful, super grateful for your vulnerability and sharing your journey of what the Lord has done through you and the healing that you've also participated in with the work that He's done in your life. Super grateful for you that God crossed our paths in
Amen to
Panera,
that.
and just excited to be able to continue to follow your journey.
Well, Noble, thank you for the opportunity to capitalize on the platform that you've built of all these EQ gangsters that are out there. You are the OG EQ PhD Esquire. I don't know how many letters we can include in that. But that moment where, as I'm walking out the door of Panera, and you affirmed me by
Mm,
saying, "Great job, Dad," I
mm,
stopped dead in my tracks because that is now something that matters to me. You
mm,
did not say, "Hey, way to make that basket," or "That was a really good dish of food." You hit a heartstring that truly mattered. And in that moment, I knew I shared a brotherhood with you, and I am grateful for the opportunity you provided to me today to share my journey. And hope, I hope I shared hope for somebody out there.